There is a strange loneliness that begins the moment you notice the lie everyone else is still calling truth. Not a dramatic lie. Not the kind with villains in dark rooms and secret plans. Something quieter. A phrase repeated so often it starts to feel like your own thought. A rule changed so slowly, no one remembers the original. A fear passed from person to person until obedience begins to look like wisdom. George Orwell understood this. In Animal Farm, the animals do not lose their freedom in one violent moment. They lose it one sentence at a time. One commandment becomes flexible. One memory becomes doubtful. One slogan becomes easier than thinking. And the most disturbing part is this. The animals are not stupid. They are tired. They are afraid. They want to belong. So what happens to the one who still sees? What happens to the person who looks at the wall and remembers what was written there before? In this video, we are not just talking about propaganda. We are talking about the psychology of people who see through the lie. And why, from Orwell to Dostoevsky, from 1984 to Brave New World, the clear mind often becomes the loneliest one in the room. The first lie in Animal Farm is not loud. It does not arrive as a scream. It arrives as an explanation. The milk disappears. The apples are reserved. The pigs begin to receive something the other animals do not. And when the animals feel that quiet instinct that says, "Wait, this was not the promise," Squealer steps forward and gives the lie a gentle voice. "Not for our pleasure," he says, "for your sake." That is the beginning of almost every system of manipulation. Not cruelty first, justification first. The manipulator does not begin by asking you to surrender everything. He begins by asking you to ignore one small contradiction. Something minor. Something that can be explained away if you are tired enough, afraid enough, or desperate enough to keep believing. The animals do not wake up one morning and suddenly accept tyranny. They adapt to it. Slowly, politely, almost reasonably. Each change is small enough to tolerate. Each excuse is smooth enough to repeat. And before they know it, they are living inside a reality that has been edited around them. This is the deeper warning of Animal Farm. Power does not only corrupt institutions, it corrupts memory. A society can only be controlled if it can be made to forget what it once knew. The animals remember the commandments, but not clearly enough. They remember the promises, but not confidently enough. They remember Snowball's courage, but then Squealer tells them another story. And because the new story is repeated more loudly than the old memory, the memory begins to weaken. This is not just political, it is psychological. The human mind has a strange relationship with repetition. What is repeated begins to feel familiar. What feels familiar begins to feel safe. And what feels safe can easily be mistaken for truth. That is why slogans are so powerful. A slogan is not an argument. It is an escape from argument. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Napoleon is always right. You can laugh at the sheep in Orwell's fable until you notice how often modern life trains people to do the same thing with different words. We repeat headlines we barely examined. We inherit opinions from groups we want to belong to. We defend narratives that gave us identity before they ever gave us evidence. We confuse being informed with being awake. And sometimes the scariest part is not that someone lied to us. It is that the lie gave us a place to stand. In 1984, Orwell imagined a world where truth is crushed by force, where language is reduced until thought itself becomes dangerous. But Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, Imagine something softer, a world where people do not need to be forced away from truth because they have been entertained away from it. One world controls through fear, the other controls through comfort. Modern society has learned to borrow from both. It can frighten you with crisis, then soothe you with distraction. It can overload you with information, then sell you relief from the exhaustion it created. This is how critical thinking dies. Not because people become incapable of intelligence. Many people can argue beautifully. But critical thinking is not the same as intelligence. Critical thinking asks you to pause before joining the chant, to notice when your anger is being used, to ask, who benefits if I believe this? To become temporarily homeless inside your own certainty. And most people hate that feeling. Certainty gives warmth, the group gives shelter, the slogan gives rhythm, but a question creates exile. A real question removes you, even briefly, from the comfort of the crowd. That is why people often avoid thinking deeply, not because they cannot, but because they sense what it may cost. If I question this, will I still belong? If I doubt this, who will I become? If I admit I was wrong, what else in my life begins to shake? And here is the loop we need to keep open. A lie survives not only because someone tells it, but because many people need it. Dostoevsky saw this with terrifying clarity in The Brothers Karamazov. Many people do not hate freedom. They find it unbearably heavy. They would rather be fed, guided, reassured, and relieved of the burden of choosing. Freedom sounds beautiful from a distance. Up close, it asks for responsibility. And that is why the person who sees through the lie is never just dealing with information. They are dealing with grief. The grief of realizing that some beliefs were borrowed. The grief of seeing how easily language can be bent. The grief of watching people defend the very thing that is quietly consuming them. But Animal Farm gives us one more mirror. Benjamin. He can read. He remembers. He notices the changes. He understands more than he says. And Benjamin may be the most uncomfortable character in the book, because he shows us that seeing through the lie is not enough. The next question is darker. What happens when you see the truth clearly, but no longer believe anything can be done with it? Benjamin is dangerous because he does not believe the lie, but he also does not resist it. He sees the farm changing. He sees the commandments bending. He sees the pigs becoming what they once hated. And still, for most of the story, he remains still. This is why he feels so modern. Benjamin is not the sheep, repeating whatever phrase is easiest. He is not Boxer, pouring his soul into a system that will eventually sell him. He is not Napoleon, hungry for control. He is the one who understands enough to be wounded, but not enough to be free. And that may be the most painful form of intelligence, to see clearly and still feel powerless. Animal Farm is often read as a warning about propaganda, but Benjamin adds another layer. Orwell is not only asking how people are deceived, he is asking what happens to those who are not deceived, but have lost the will to act. There is a stage where the mind can recognize the lie, name the pattern, predict the collapse, and still do nothing. Not because it is ignorant, because it is tired. Cynicism can look like wisdom from a distance. It has the tone of someone who has seen too much. It says, this always happens. People never change. Power always wins. Why bother? Sometimes cynicism is born from real perception. The cynical person may have noticed things earlier than everyone else. They may have been mocked, dismissed, called negative, dramatic, paranoid, difficult. Then, when the truth finally appears, instead of becoming courageous, they become colder. They stop warning people. They stop hoping. They become Benjamin, watching history repeat itself with a tired face. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Cynicism is not the opposite of manipulation. Sometimes it is manipulation's final victory. The system does not need you to believe the lie if it can convince you that truth no longer matters. The believer obeys because he trusts the story. The cynic obeys because he thinks resistance is pointless. Both remain on the farm. This is where Kafka enters the room quietly. In the trial, Joseph K. is trapped inside a system that never fully explains itself. He is accused, but the accusation has no clear face. He searches for logic, but every corridor leads to another corridor, another official, another ritual of confusion. Kafka understood a form of control that does not need slogans. It only needs opacity. Make the system so complex, so absurd, so impossible to question cleanly, that people surrender from exhaustion. Modern life often feels less like a prison with bars and more like a maze with notifications. Every day brings new crises, new moral emergencies, new arguments everyone is expected to join immediately. You are given opinions faster than you can digest reality. You are asked to react before you have understood. You are invited to choose a side before asking whether the sides were designed for you. And if you hesitate, if you ask for silence, if you refuse the emotional rhythm of the crowd, people begin to suspect you. Albert Camus saw this with haunting simplicity in The Stranger. Meursault is judged not only for what he has done, but for failing to perform the emotion society demands from him. He does not cry in the right moment. He does not speak in the expected tone. He does not wear the approved mask of feeling. And because of that, he appears monstrous. This is another kind of lie. The lie of required performance. The person who thinks critically becomes disturbing because they interrupt the performance. They pause when everyone is clapping. They ask why when everyone is chanting. They remember yesterday's commandment when the wall has already been repainted. This is why the clear mind is often treated as cold before it is recognized as honest. It refuses to move at the speed of manipulation. It refuses to confuse emotion with evidence. It refuses to call a crowd a conscience. But there is a danger here too. The person who sees through the lie can begin to feel superior to those who do not. And that superiority is another trap. Critical thinking without compassion becomes another form of pride. Dostoevsky would never let us get away with that. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov thinks himself beyond ordinary morality. His intelligence becomes a courtroom where he excuses himself before committing the crime. The mind can be brilliant and still be corrupt. It can question society and still be enslaved by ego. So the real question is not simply, do you see through the lie? The deeper question is, what does seeing do to your soul? Does it make you more awake or merely more bitter? Does it make you more truthful or only more isolated? Does it give you courage or just an excuse to despise the crowd? This is the next threshold. The next threshold is language. Every system that wants to control perception must eventually control words. Orwell understood this so well that he returned to it in 1984. In Animal Farm, the commandments on the wall are quietly edited. In 1984, the editing becomes total. The past is rewritten. Records disappear. Words are removed from language itself. The goal is not simply to make people say the wrong thing. The goal is to make it harder for them to think the forbidden thing in the first place. Words are not just labels placed on reality. They are tools the mind uses to touch reality. When language becomes shallow, thought becomes shallow with it. When words are twisted, perception begins to bend. When a society loses the ability to name what is happening, it can feel danger everywhere and still fail to describe it. So people accept the labels handed to them. They call distraction freedom. They call reaction awareness. They call performance authenticity. They call obedience safety. Once the wrong name is attached to the wound, healing becomes difficult. This is why the first act of real thinking is often not answering, but renaming. To look at something everyone calls normal and quietly ask, what is this really? Fahrenheit 451 gives us another version of the same wound. Bradbury imagined a world where books are burned, but the deeper horror is not the fire. It is the fact that many people no longer want the books. They do not want silence. They do not want depth. They do not want the discomfort of sitting with a thought long enough for it to change them. The firemen burn what society has already abandoned internally. A culture does not need to destroy depth by force if it can train people to fear stillness. Give them noise, give them speed, give them entertainment so constant that silence begins to feel like punishment. Then one day, a person opens a book and discovers that reading is not merely receiving information. It is recovering an inner room, a private space where the mind can breathe without being watched. That is dangerous. Not because books magically make people good, but because deep reading restores the slow rhythm of thought. Manipulation hates slowness. Manipulation needs urgency. It needs you angry now, afraid now, certain now, loyal now. It needs you to react before your deeper intelligence has entered the room. This is why modern life is designed around interruption. The notification, the headline, the scandal, the trend. Each one asks for a piece of your mind. Not all at once, just a little, just enough. Eventually, the self becomes scattered across 1,000 tiny demands. Brave New World reveals another side of the same prison. Huxley did not imagine a society controlled mainly by terror. He imagined one controlled by pleasure, comfort, consumption, and distraction. A world where people are not forced into obedience because they are too entertained to desire freedom deeply. This may be the more unsettling prophecy now. Many modern people do not feel oppressed. They feel busy, stimulated, informed, connected, but beneath that connection there is often a strange emptiness, as if the soul has been fed sugar and denied bread. A person can scroll for hours and still feel starved. A person can know everything that happened today and understand almost nothing about themselves. So the question becomes darker. What if the lie is no longer only something we believe? What if the lie is the pace of life that prevents belief from becoming reflection? In Animal Farm, the sheep repeat the slogan until thought disappears. In our world, repetition is not always spoken aloud. Sometimes it is visual, sometimes it is emotional, sometimes it is algorithmic. You see the same fear in different costumes, the same desire in different products, the same outrage in different headlines. Slowly, the mind begins to live inside patterns it did not choose. This is why people who think critically often feel like they are moving against the weather. They are not only questioning ideas, they are questioning rhythm. They are refusing to let the speed of the crowd become the speed of their conscience. That refusal can look strange. But maybe slowness is not weakness. Maybe slowness is how the soul protects itself from being programmed. Maybe the person who pauses is not behind. Maybe they are the only one giving reality enough time to speak. Still, pausing is only the beginning. Because once you recover language, silence, and the machinery of repetition, another question appears. If the world can shape your thoughts from the outside, what has it already built inside you? The world does not only shape your thoughts through slogans, screens, or language, it also shapes them through fear. And fear is older than propaganda. Long before algorithms learned to predict attention, human beings learned to survive by watching the group. To be rejected from the tribe once meant danger, hunger, exposure, death. So the nervous system learned a simple rule. Belonging feels safe, separation feels dangerous. This is why critical thinking is never just intellectual. It is biological. When you question the belief of the group, your mind may be searching for truth, but your body may feel like it is risking exile. That is why people can defend ideas they barely understand with an intensity that looks almost religious. They are not only defending an argument, they are defending a place in the herd. Animal Farm shows this with painful simplicity. The animals are manipulated by fear. Fear that Jones will return, fear that the farm will collapse, fear that doubt itself is betrayal. Squealer does not need to prove everything. He only needs to attach questioning to danger. Once questioning feels dangerous, obedience begins to feel responsible. Make people feel that doubt is disloyalty, and they will police themselves. They carry the fence inside. Lord of the Flies shows another side of this. William Golding places children on an island, away from adult systems and formal authority. And still the group creates fear, ritual, violence, and sacrifice. Tyranny is not only imposed from above, sometimes it rises from below, from the hunger to belong, to blame, to chant around the same fire. The crowd does not always need a sophisticated ideology. Sometimes it only needs a monster to fear and a song to repeat. In Animal Farm, the monster is often Snowball, the absent enemy who explains everything that goes wrong. Every failure, every shortage, every broken plan can be placed on him. A scapegoat protects the group from reflection. If everything is Snowball's fault, the animals never have to ask whether Napoleon is lying, whether the system is broken, or whether they surrendered too much. Modern life has its own snowballs. The name changes, but the function remains. The scapegoat gives people relief from complexity. It says, do not look inward. Put all discomfort over there. Hate it loudly, then return to sleep. This is why serious thinking is so difficult. It removes the scapegoat. It asks us to face what we have allowed, repeated, defended, ignored. That honesty is heavier than outrage. Outrage gives energy. Honesty asks for transformation. The giver gives us a gentler but equally disturbing image. Lois Lowry imagines a community that has removed pain, conflict, memory, and dangerous choice. On the surface, everything looks peaceful, but the cost is the flattening of the soul. Without memory, people cannot truly understand love. Without pain, they cannot understand compassion. Without choice, they cannot become morally awake. Many people do not surrender freedom because they love oppression. They surrender it because they want relief. Relief from uncertainty. Relief from conflict. Relief from the burden of becoming a person. Dostoevsky saw this in the brothers Karamazov, especially in the shadow of the Grand Inquisitor. Human beings may praise freedom while secretly begging someone else to carry its weight. Give us bread. Give us certainty. Give us rules. Give us someone to blame. Give us permission not to stand alone. And this is where the person who sees through the lie begins to suffer. Once you see the machinery, you can no longer enjoy comfort in the same innocent way. You cannot unhear the slogan. You cannot unknow the changed commandment. You cannot return fully to belonging if belonging requires you to betray your own perception. This is why clarity can feel like grief. Truth often takes away the illusions that were keeping you comfortable. The first loss is innocence. The second is certainty. The third is the fantasy that everyone will thank you for seeing clearly. They will not. Often, they will resent you. Not because you are wrong, but because your question threatens the arrangement that helps them sleep. So the temptation appears to retreat, to become Benjamin, to see and say nothing, to protect yourself with irony, to turn perception into distance. But there is another way. Critical thinking does not have to make you cold. It can make you more careful, more humble, more difficult to manipulate, yes, but also more compassionate toward those who are still afraid. Once you understand fear, you stop seeing the crowd as stupid. You begin to see the wound beneath the obedience. The next question is not how to prove you are awake. The next question is how to stay awake without losing your humanity. Staying awake without losing your humanity requires a different kind of strength. Not the strength of proving everyone wrong. Not the strength of becoming untouchable, ironic, detached. A quieter strength. The strength to see the machinery and still remain capable of tenderness. Once you notice how easily people are shaped, there is a temptation to look at the world with contempt. You see the slogans, the borrowed opinions, the fear disguised as conviction, and something in you wants to step away from everyone. But contempt is not freedom. Contempt is another cage. It keeps you above people but never truly with them. Clarity can become isolation if it is not softened by love. This is where literature becomes a mirror for the soul. In the picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde gives us a man who cannot face what is happening inside him. His portrait carries the corruption he refuses to see. His outer life remains beautiful, polished, admired, while the hidden image absorbs the truth. That is not only a story about vanity, it is a story about self-deception. And self-deception is the most intimate propaganda of all. It is easy to point at governments, algorithms, institutions, crowds. It is harder to ask, what lie am I protecting because it protects my image of myself? Every age has public slogans, but every person has private ones too. I am fine. I had no choice. I am only being realistic. Everyone does this. These are the phrases that keep the portrait hidden in the attic. If critical thinking only looks outward, it becomes incomplete. It can expose propaganda in the world while leaving the ego untouched. That is why deep thinking must turn inward. Not to destroy the self, but to separate perception from pride. This is where Jung becomes useful, not as decoration but as diagnosis. The shadow is not just the evil hidden in us. It is everything we cannot bear to recognize as our own. The part that wants approval. The part that enjoys being right. The part that secretly needs the crowd it criticizes. Without this inner honesty, critical thinking can become another costume for the ego. A person may reject the mass mind publicly while privately being possessed by the need to feel superior. And then the rebellion becomes another performance. Real awakening is quieter than most people imagine. It does not always look like shouting truth from a rooftop. Sometimes it looks like refusing to turn insight into identity. Sometimes it looks like admitting that you too have been manipulated. You too have repeated things without understanding them. You too have obeyed invisible fears. That admission hurts, but it cleans the mind. It makes perception honest again. In The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien gives us one of the clearest symbols of this danger. The ring. Everyone who touches it imagines using it for good. They do not begin by saying, "I want to become corrupt." They say, "I can handle this power. I can use it wisely. I can fix what others ruined." And that is precisely how corruption begins. The lie does not always enter as darkness. Sometimes it enters as a noble intention with no humility. Power does not only tempt the cruel, it tempts the wounded, the intelligent, the visionary, the one who thinks, "If only I were in control, things would finally be different." But Animal Farm warns us what happens when the liberator becomes the new master. The pigs do not begin by looking like the humans. They arrive through promises, explanations, necessity, efficiency, sacrifice. Then one day, everyone looks through the window, and it is impossible to tell pig from man. That final image matters because it shows how slowly transformation can become betrayal. Not only in politics, in the individual soul. A person can begin by seeking truth and end by worshipping their own perception. A person can begin by resisting manipulation and end by manipulating others with elegant language. A person can begin as the one who sees and become the one who cannot be questioned. So the point is not to become unbreakably certain. The point is to become harder to possess. Harder for fear to possess. Harder for outrage to possess. Harder for pride to possess. Harder for the crowd to possess. And harder for loneliness to possess too. Even isolation can become a master. Even being different can become addictive. Even seeing through the lie can become a lie if it convinces you that you no longer need humility. Perhaps the mark of a free mind is not that it doubts everything. It is that it can doubt without becoming empty. It can question without becoming cruel. It can stand apart without losing the ability to love. And that brings us to the hardest part of the journey. What do you do with the truth once you have seen it? Now we arrive at the question every clear mind eventually faces. What do you do with the truth once you have seen it? Not truth as a weapon, not truth as a costume. The quieter truth, the one that changes how you listen, speak, belong, and remain silent. Seeing through the lie does not automatically make a person brave. Sometimes it makes them lonely. Sometimes it makes them afraid of being impossible to love. In Animal Farm, Benjamin sees too much, but he does not turn what he sees into protection for others until the tragedy is already moving. This is why his silence hurts. He is not evil. He is not foolish. He is tired, but tired clarity can still become complicity. There is a moment when not speaking is no longer wisdom. It is surrender wearing the clothes of wisdom. This does not mean shouting at every crowd, correcting every sentence, or becoming a public alarm. That kind of life burns the soul quickly. Real discernment is more precise than reaction. It knows when to speak, when to wait, when to ask a better question, and when to refuse the theatre completely. The person who sees through the lie must learn the difference between noise and witness. Noise wants attention. Witness wants truth to survive. A witness does not humiliate the sleeping person. A witness simply refuses to sleep on command. If you are still here with me at this point in the video, then something in this conversation is probably touching a place you do not often hear named. So I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Leave a like if this reflection is helping you see something more clearly, and activate the notifications so you can keep walking with us through these maps of psychology, literature, myth, and the hidden structures beneath modern life, not to escape reality, but to see it more honestly, and perhaps to recover the parts of ourselves that the noise of the world has slowly trained us to forget. And now, back to the harder part, because the more clearly you see, the more responsible your attention becomes. If every outrage can possess you, you are not free. If every slogan can recruit you, you are not free. If every group can make you betray your perception to keep your place at the table, you are not free. But freedom is not isolation either. The free mind is not the mind that belongs nowhere. It is the mind that can belong without becoming possessed. This is where the literary thread comes together. Orwell gives us the rewritten wall. Huxley gives us the comfortable cage. Bradbury gives us the burned book and the noisy room. Kafka gives us the faceless system. Camus gives us the person punished for not performing the approved emotion. Dostoevsky gives us the terror of freedom. Walde gives us the hidden portrait. Tolkien gives us the ring that corrupts noble intention. Different books, different worlds, the same warning. The deepest conquest happens when the inner life gives itself away. That is why critical thinking is not merely a mental skill. It is a moral practice. It is the discipline of not letting fear think for you, not letting comfort think for you, not letting the crowd, the wound, the algorithm, or the ego think for you. It is the ability to say, I need a moment, when the world demands an instant opinion. It is the ability to say, I may be wrong, without collapsing. It is the ability to say, I will not repeat what I have not examined. This may sound small, but in a culture built on reaction, pausing becomes rebellion. In a culture built on performance, sincerity becomes strange. In a culture built on speed, depth becomes almost offensive. The person who chooses depth will often feel out of rhythm with the age. That feeling is not always a sign that something is wrong with you. Sometimes it is the first sign that your inner life is returning. But inner life must be protected, not with arrogance, with silence, with reading, with conversations that do not turn every disagreement into war. Because the lie does not only come from them. The mature truth is this: the lie looks for a door in every human being. In the frightened person, it enters as safety. In the angry person, it enters as justice. In the lonely person, it enters as belonging. In the intelligent person, it enters as superiority. That last one is dangerous for people who see themselves as awake. The lie flatters them by saying, you are above all this. You are not like the others. And if they believe it, they become easier to control than before because pride has made them blind in a more elegant way. So perhaps the real task is not to become the one who sees everything. No one sees everything. The task is to become the kind of person who can keep seeing, keep questioning, keep softening, and keep returning to truth without needing truth to make them feel superior. That is when perception becomes wisdom. And wisdom does not merely expose the lie. It protects what is still alive after the lie has been exposed. And now we return to the beginning. A wall, a commandment, a memory that someone tried to edit. In Animal Farm, the tragedy is not only that the pigs become indistinguishable from the humans. It is that the animals arrive at that final window, almost unable to trust what they are seeing. Their eyes still work, but their inner authority has been slowly taken from them. That is the deepest danger of the lie. It does not merely give you false information. It trains you to abandon your own perception. First, you doubt your memory, then your questions, then your discomfort, and finally, you begin to call that surrender peace. This is why critical thinking is not a cold intellectual exercise. It is a way of staying alive inside your own mind. It is the refusal to let language be stolen from you, the refusal to let speed replace depth, the refusal to let belonging require blindness. Orwell gives us the farm. Bradbury gives us the fire. Huxley gives us the pleasure that makes chains feel unnecessary. Kafka gives us the system with no face. Camus gives us the outsider punished for not performing the approved emotion. Dostoevsky gives us the terrible weight of freedom. Wilde gives us the hidden portrait. Tolkien gives us the ring, whispering that power can be used without changing the one who carries it. All of them ask the same question. What happens when the world teaches a person to live outside their own soul? Maybe this is why people who see through the lie often feel so tired. They are not only carrying information, they are carrying the burden of perception. They remember what was written before. They notice the change in tone. They feel the false note in the room before anyone else hears the music has gone wrong. But the point of seeing is not to become harder than everyone else. The point of seeing is to become responsible for what remains human in you. Because the final victory of manipulation is not belief. It is not even obedience. It is the moment a person becomes so disgusted with the world that they stop loving anything enough to protect it. That is when the lie wins twice. It controls the sleeping through comfort, and it controls the awake through bitterness. So perhaps the real rebellion is smaller than we imagined. It begins when you pause before repeating, when you read something slowly, when you ask who benefits from your anger, when you allow a question to disturb you without rushing to cover it with an answer, when you admit that you too have been shaped, you too have wanted the easy slogan, you too have traded silence for noise, depth for speed, truth for belonging. This humility does not weaken the mind. It cleans it. It turns perception into wisdom. Benjamin saw, but he almost waited too long. Boxer believed, but his belief was used against him. The sheep repeated, until repetition replaced thought. The pigs explained, until explanation became domination. And the farm changed so gradually that almost everyone learned to live inside the change. That is why the question is not only whether you can identify the pigs at the table. The question is whether you can notice the first small edit on the wall. The first phrase that asks you to betray what you remember. The first moment your body says something is wrong, while everyone around you says everything is normal. Do not worship suspicion. That is another trap. But do not surrender your sight either. A free mind is not a paranoid mind. It is a patient one. It is willing to look, to wait, to examine, to be corrected, to stand alone when necessary, and to return to love when solitude has done its work. This is the kind of freedom no system can easily use, not because it is loud, but because it is rooted. Not because it knows everything, but because it refuses to let fear, pride, comfort, or the crowd do its thinking for it. Maybe that is where the clear mind becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Not dangerous because it wants to destroy. Dangerous because it cannot be purchased. It cannot be hurried into outrage. It cannot be seduced by every beautiful lie. It cannot be made to forget the wall. So if this video stayed with you, share it with 5 people who still value depth. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep exploring these hidden structures through psychology, literature, myth, and the strange mirror of modern life. And leave a sincere comment below. What is one lie you once believed, not because you were foolish, but because belonging made it feel true? You can also tell me what book, myth, or psychological pattern you want us to explore next. Because sometimes the return of truth does not begin with a revolution. It begins with one person standing quietly before the wall, daring to remember what was written there before.